Hey, hello, and welcome. In this React crash course, we're going to learn how to work with React by building an Instagram clone from scratch. Well, not just an Instagram clone, an actual Instagram app that works. You can see I'm able to change my profile image. I can add other images to my Instagram application. I can also edit my bio. So this right here says Ebenezer Don. What if I wanted to be Jane Butters? And instead of building newdev.io, I have built in Fire newdev.io. And look at that. I can go ahead and add more images to my Instagram app. I can also delete images from my Instagram application. So if I don't want the middle image anymore, I can hit the delete button when I hover on it, and that's gone. We're also going to learn how to work with web storage using IndexedDb and DexieJS, so that when we add an image to our Instagram application, even if we reload this app for as many times as we want, we're always going to see our data waiting for us. Even if we close our browser and come back to it, our data, our images are always going to be waiting for us right here in our application. We'll learn how to work with components in our React application so that we can break down our React app, work independently on the nav bar, the bio, the gallery section, and bring them all together as one application. We'll learn about state management and how to work with external packages like the DexieJS package we'll be using to work with IndexedDB in our React application. This is going to be fun and I can't wait to get started. So let's dive right in and start building. Hey, you're right. To follow along with this crash course, you need knowledge of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. These are very important. I always advise developers to have a good understanding of JavaScript before moving on to any framework so that you'll be able to follow along properly and understand what's going on under the hood. To get started, you need Node.js installed on your computer. Unlike our regular HTML and CSS apps, our React application needs to run on a server, and we're going to use Node.js to achieve that. If you don't have Node.js installed, you can come over to the nodejs.org website and hit the download button on your OS of choice. With Node.js installed, you're going to have access to the npx and npm commands on your terminal. We'll use npx to generate our new React application and npm to start up our React app and to also install external libraries like DexieJS, which you're going to be using to handle browser storage. If you worked with jQuery before, that's an example of an external library. So to generate a React application, let's run the command npx and then create -react-app and the name of our React application. I'm going to name mine my Instagram. And you hit enter. We should have a React application generated for us. Now, depending on where you are, you might receive an error that says socket refused to connect. Just ignore that and try again. That's an internet connectivity issue. With my React application generated for me, you can see that's inside of my Instagram directory. I can open it up in my code editor of choice. I'm using VS Code for this. And for that, I run the command code and my Instagram, and that should open up VS Code for me with my new Instagram application. Now, inside of your new React application, the first directory you see is the node modules directory. This contains node modules for our React application, and these are packages that React uses under the hood to make our application work. This directory is auto-generated, so you won't need to modify it. Before we explain other files and directories in our application, let's start up our React app and open it up in a browser so that we see what it looks like. Now, to start up your React app, you need to open up your terminal. Inside of your terminal and inside of the React app directory, run the command npm start. And if you don't want to use the terminal and you're using VS Code, for example, you can come over to the npm script section on the bottom left, and you see the different commands you can run for your React app. That the start command, and we can hit run to start up our React application. This is the equivalent of npm start, and that should open up our React application in a browser. Look at that. This is open in localhost 3001. Back to a terminal, compiled successfully. You can view my Instagram in the browser and on localhost 3001. So this is where our React application is currently running. There's this .history folder that's showing up now, and this is just because I'm using VS Code. VS Code has a local history setting that auto generates local history versions of our project. This has nothing to do with React, so I'm just going to add that to git ignore. And if you don't understand what gitignore is all about, you need to take a refresher course on Git. Basically, these are all the files and folders we don't want to add to our Git repository. So the history folder right here is nothing you should worry about. Now there's the public directory, which contains the favicon.ico file, our index.html file, logo.png, and the manifest.json file. Now inside of our index.html file is where we have the only index.html file, the only HTML file we'll need in our React application. And this HTML file contains only an empty root div. Back to our browser, see our React application currently has this logo, this text. None of this is found in our index.html file. We are going to create our page with JavaScript, and then we'll put that inside of the root div, which is on line 31. We use JavaScript to do that, so you don't need to add any extra divs or work on this index.html file. Unless you want to add like CDN inside of the head tag, you can do that right here. You can add like a bootstrap CDN, for example, or you can change the title of your React application to my Instagram app, for example. So this is my Instagram app, and that should also reflect when you go back to your browser. Back to our file explorer, we also have the src directory. src stands for source, and this contains JavaScript and CSS files. We have the app.css file for styling our React application. We have the app.js file, which houses our app components. Components in React are reusable bits of code. Remember, we talked about the completed app where we have the nav bar, we have the bio, we have the gallery. These are all different components which we brought together to form one application. So we can have as many components as we want in React application. And components are functions, like how the app function is created on line 4 and is being exported on line 25. We'll see more of components in a bit. We also have the app.test.js file for testing our React application. If you've not heard about testing before, you need a refresher course also on test-driven development. With React, test-driven development with JavaScript, test-driven development in programming in general. We have the index.css file for styling again. We have the index.js file. And this is where we are bringing our app components. And this is where we're also rendering our app component and putting it inside of the root div, which is created in the public/index.html file. So right here on line 7, you can see where React DOM is used to create roots, and then as an argument to this function, we have document.getElement by ID roots. And on line 8, we have root.render, and this is rendering our app.js components inside of this root div, which is in the public/index.html file. Also notice that React components work like tag. Right here we have our app.js file, which was created as a function, but when we come over to the index.js file, you can see that it's being called like a regular HTML tag, and that's how components are called in React. On line 9, we have React.strict mode, and that's also a component. We can do without it, but React.strict mode help enable some extra checks in our React application so that we don't have bugs that can be avoided in production. If these import statements are looking foreign to you, you should pause this video and take a refresher course on modularization with JavaScript. Luckily, I have a course for that right here on YouTube, so you can check it out right now. You learn how to work with modules, how to export and import modules and use them in JavaScript applications, not just React. So modularization is what you expected to learn in JavaScript and not with React. On line 1, we're importing React from the React package. We're also importing React DOM from the React DOM/client package. And packages in React and JavaScript in general are installed using npm. And when we install these packages, we'll see them in the package.json file. This is the package.json file right here, which contains dependencies for our application. We have the testing library/JSDOM. All these dependencies were automatically installed for us when we generated our React application using create React app on a terminal. On line 6, we have the testing library package, which is for testing React applications. We have our React package. We have the React DOM package, which is used to work with DOM in our React application. We have the React script package, web vitals package. And on line 14 is where we have the scripts for our application. We've already used the start script, which is on line 15, and that's used to start up our application. We have the build script, which is used to compile our application. We have the test script for testing our React application, and we have the eject script, which you will need to be running in your React applications. But this is just in case you want to work under the hood, you're not satisfied with your generated create React app. You can run the eject script so that you have low-level access to your React apps. 99% of the time you won't be needing this. And you should also note that this is non-reversible. Once you eject your application from the create react app setup, you'll have to always work with that ejected application. Now back to our src directory, we have the report web-vitals.js file, and this is auto generated with create react app also, and this is for measuring web performance with a react app. We won't be needing this for our Instagram application, so let's start by deleting the report web-vitals.js file. We also want to delete every unnecessary file so that we keep it lean and you'll be able to understand exactly which files we are working with. We don't need the setup test.js file. We also don't need the app.test.js file. And for our CSS, we need only one CSS file. So let's remove the index.css file. And we also want to remove the logo.svg file. All right, now this is all we have for our React application. We have the app.css file for styling, we have the app.js file for our app components, and we have the index.js file where we're bringing in our app components and where we're also rendering our React application, putting our app component inside of our index.html file, the root div which was created there. On line 5, you can see that since we've deleted the report web-vitals file, we have an error right here. So let's also remove line 5. We also want to remove line 16 and the comments right here. And this is all we have for our React application. We should also remove line 3, the index.css file. And right now, line 1, we're importing React from the React package. We're importing React DOM from the React DOM/client package. And we're importing the app component from the app.js file. And on line 5, we're using React DOM to create routes. And on line 6, we're rendering our React component inside of routes. Let's understand better how to work with components in React applications. Right now, when we go back to our browser, we have an error that says module not found, can't resolve logo.svg, and this is because we've deleted logo.svg on line 1. So let's also remove it, and we also want to remove its use on line 7, and this is all we have right now. We can save this and try again and look at what we have on a browser. Back to our code base. On line 3 is where we're creating our app components, and components in React applications are functions. There are also React applications that use classes instead of functions, and this was the old way to work with React. But right now, every modern React application uses functions, and if you want to learn how to work with React, if you want to learn React, I'll advise you to also learn how to work with functions instead of classes, because functions are more straightforward in my experience than working with classes. So this is our function, this is our app function. We can also create this as an arrow function, and that'll be the same thing as const app is equal to this arrow function right on line 3, and we're exporting it on line 18. You can see we have a div right here on line 5, and we have class name as app. Now in your regular HTML, you're going to see class instead of class name, but with React we have class name, and this is because React uses JSX, and that simply means extended JavaScript. That's a way to have to write HTML inside of JavaScript and JavaScript inside of HTML. For example, we can create a new line, and on line 4 we have a variable named name, which is equal to John Doe, and we can go ahead and use this variable inside of our JSX code. So right here where we have the p tag and we have edits src/app.js and save to reload, let's write hello John instead. So hello, and then we have name. So to be able to use JavaScript inside of HTML in JSX, we're going to wrap our JavaScript in curly braces. So this is hello name, and just to make it more visible, we're going to wrap this in an h1 tag. Let's save and back to our browser and look at that, hello John Doe. So we can use JavaScript inside of HTML with JSX, and this is what you're going to see in every React application, every React code base you work with. Or we can also create other components in our React application. For example, let's create a button component inside of our src directory, create a new file, and then we'll name it button. And notice that our component names start with capital letter, and this is so that we can have as many JavaScript files as we want. But when we see the JavaScript files that start with capital letter, we know that those are components, and when we see JavaScript files that start with small letter, we know that those are ordinary JS file. Instead of using the .js extension for our components, we can use the .jsx extension for our components, and that's going to achieve the same thing that .js will, but we are sure that this is a component. It's clearer to us that button.jsx is a component right here. For our button component, it's a regular JavaScript function, and we name it button components and name the capital letter. Remember, so this is const button, and this is a JavaScript function that's going to return a JSX code. So right here we are going to return JSX. And what do we want for our JSX? Let's start with the regular HTML button tag. Notice that this is with small letter, while our own created button tag starts with the capital letter for B. Now this is our own HTML button, and inside of our button tag we can write the text click me. Right here we have the click me text for our button tag, and when I save, I have this pretty extension installed that helps me reformat my JavaScript codes to follow best practices and remove unnecessary lines. But right now I want this as a return with the parentheses, so it's easier for you to understand. And we have a button with text click me. Another thing we can do is add an on-click event listener like you would with HTML. So this is on-click right here, and an on-click event listener expects a function, and this is a function that's going to return alert and hey right here. And we can export a button, so export default and button. Now with our button exported, we can import it inside of the app.js file and call it just like a regular HTML tag. Back to our app.js file, we're going to import our button component, and let's do that online one. We have import, and we have button from /button right here, and then we have hello name, which is John Doe. We can use our button components like this button, and this is our button component. If we save this and go back to a browser, look at that, we have hello John Doe, and we have click me for a button. And when we click on this button, we have our last statement which says hey and okay. React components are reusable and can also be customized. So when we come to the button.jsx file, and instead of alert hey every time we click on the button, we can give our components that call this button a choice of choosing whatever text we want to write in the button inside of our alert statement. So instead of hey, if I call my button, I can decide to say hey. If I call this button, instead of alerting hey, alert hello everyone, hello world, and all that. So back to our button.jsx file, we can make this possible by using props. And props are basically what you know as parameters and arguments in normal JavaScript, in normal JavaScript functions. And for props in React apps, in React functional components, and for props in React components, we have them as the first argument in the function. So this is props right here. And back to line 2, instead of alert hey, we have props.alert text. Now what's going to happen is that when we go over to our app.js file and we call our button component, we can then pass the alert text prop to it with a value of choice. Now let's try that. Back to the app.js file, and we have the line 11 we are calling the button component. We have alert text right here, and this is going to be equal to hello everyone. And let's save that, and back to a browser, let's click on this button. And look at that, hello everyone. So React components can be customized. We can take this component, this button component, and use it wherever we want to use it. And we can pass in any alert text we want. Instead of hello everyone, hello somebody, hello John, hello Jane, hello Doe, how are you everyone. And our button component is going to use whatever prop we pass to it. We can also have as many props as we want in our React components. So instead of just props on line 1, let's destructure immediately and get alert text right here as a prop, so that we don't need to call props.alert text. We can just directly use alert text, and we can go back to a browser and try again. Let's click on the button and look at that, hey everyone. And that's for creating components and working with props in a React application. We've also seen how to use JSX in a React app, how to use JavaScript inside of a GSS code, JavaScript inside of our HTML code by wrapping it in the curly brace, for example, where we have on line 10 hello and name, which results to hello John Doe. So let's start building our Instagram application. For our Instagram app, remember that we have 3 different components we want to create. We have the nav component, we also have the bio component, and we have the gallery component. Back to our code base, we're going to start by deleting this button.jsx file, as we won't be using it in our Instagram app. And we have the app.js file. Let's remove everything that's currently inside of it. We just have the div. We're also going to remove line 5 where we declare the name variable, and remove our import statement of button on line 1. Now we have just app.css, app.js, and the index.js file. For our bio, gallery, and nav components, let's create a new folder named components, and this is just so that we can separate the components from the other files in our React application. This is going to make understanding your code base easier. So you have the components folder, and we have a new file. Let's name the first file nav.jsx, and the second file is going to be bio.jsx. Let's rename that to gsx, and the third file is going to be gallery.gsx. So the third file is gallery.gsx, and we have our three main components for our application. To focus on React and its functionalities, we're not going to be writing our CSS from scratch. I've already built this application, and I assume that you're already very good at HTML and CSS. So I'm just going to paste an existing CSS code inside of our app.css file. I'm going to provide the link to this CSS code for you in the description of this video, so you can just copy that and paste it in your app.css file. And all we need to do in our React components is call our different CSS classes. Let's start with the nav.jsx file. For the nav.jsx file, we'll start by creating a nav component, and this is a function, and that returns a JSX code. So let's return a JSX code for a nav component, and we use the HTML nav tag. And inside of a nav tag, we have a button for our logo, for our Instagram logo, and we use the img tag from regular HTML, and this is src, as this is going to be a link to our Instagram logo, and we have the auth as a logo. For our Instagram logo, I'm also going to provide the link in the description of this video, so you can go over to that link and you'll be able to download the Instagram logo. Let's create an assets folder where we're going to be storing our images for our React application, and this is assets right here. And I'm going to paste this Instagram logo. The link is in the description of this video, so check it out. And with our Instagram logo inside of the assets directory, we can now import it in the nav.jsx file so that we can use it in the src attribute. On line 1, let's import Instagram logo, and this is how to work with images in React. You can import them and just use it like how you would use JavaScript inside of HTML in your React component. So this is /assets/Instagram logo.png. So this is our Instagram logo imported for us, and then we're going to use that on line 7. So src is equal to Instagram logo, and we have it. You do this instead of having this src as .. and then you're trying to navigate to assets. You have to import the Instagram logo. This is the easiest way to work with images in React applications. src, and this is equal to Instagram logo, which we imported on line 1. Next, we need to export nav as default. So export default nav right here on line 13, and let's create a new line. All right, we also want to give our button a class name of logo from our CSS file. So this is class as logo, and we can save that. And to use our nav component, we'll go over to the app.js file, and we're going to import nav from the nav.jsx file. So this is import nav from ./components/nav, and we can now go ahead and use a nav component. On line 6, we have nav, and we just call that as a regular HTML tag. And we go back to the browser, we have an error which says can't resolve assets/Instagram logo.png. So back to our nav.jsx file, what are we doing? Oh, we're importing assets from Instagram logo.png instead of just Instagram.png. So this is assets, and the name of our file is Instagram.png, not Instagram logo.png. Now let's save that again and go back to the browser, and look at that, we have our Instagram logo right here on a navbar. Now back to the nav.jsx file, let's also add the search input, and that's an input tag right here, and type is text. We have class name as search. Remember, this is from our app.css file, so you can have a look at the app.css file and see what's inside of all of these classes. And we have a placeholder as search. We also want to create the different buttons on our navbar, like the home button, the message button, and so on. So we'll put this in the span tag with class of nav links. And we have our first button, and this is going to be the home button. And for our home button icon, we're going to be using font awesome. So we'll come over to our public directory, and inside of our index.html file, let's remove this comment so that it's easier to understand. And we just want to use the JavaScript script tag to bring in our Font Awesome logos. To learn more about Font Awesome, you can come to fontawesome.com, hit the start for free button, add your email address to send kit codes to get your code, or you just use what's on my screen right now on line 30. I'm also going to leave a link to this in the description of this video. back to our file explorer and over to the nav.jsx file, we can go ahead and use the font awesome tags. For our home button, we use the I tag and give it a class name, and this is from font awesome, not our app.css file. So we have FAS and FA-home. You can see more about this in the font awesome website, and this is going to give us the home icon. We also need other buttons in our Instagram navbar. We have the comment button, we have the heart button, and you're going to see what this looks like when we go back to the browser in a second. So this is FAS, and we have FA-comments-ALT, and this is FA-compass, and this is FA-hearts. Compass should be the one for messages. So let's save this and back to our browser, my Instagram app. You can see we have home, we have the one for comments, we have the one for compass, and these are the Instagram logos you're going to see, and we have the one for hearts right here. So we have a navbar created for us, and you can see that we've been able to use a navbar by exporting it and then going over to our app.js file, importing it and calling it like a regular HTML tag. This is the same way we'll create a bio component and a gallery component. To create a bio component, we're going to come over to the component/bio.jsx file and create a function named bio inside of which. Remember, components have to start with capital letters, and we have a bio component which is going to return a JSX code. We also want to export it as default, so export default bio, and this is so that we don't forget to do so later on. So you can just create your component and export it immediately. Now we have a bio component, and this is what we want to return. We want to return a JSX code, and we're going to create a section, use the section tag. This is regular HTML, nothing to do with React. So we have the section tag with HTML. We'll give the class name as bio, and inside of our section tag is where we're going to have a bio component. Let's start with a div, and we have profile photo as a class name. So div.profile photo is going to generate a new div for me with class name as profile photo, and this is the emmet functionality with VS Code. I think there's an emmet extension for this, or it comes naturally with VS Code. Either ways, this is using emmet, and we have div.profile photo, and that gives us a new div with class name as profile photo. And I also want to give this div a button role. So remember that we can change our profile image. This div right here is for our profile photo. We can click on our profile image to change it, and that's why I'm giving it the role of button. And we have the title right here as click to edit photo. Inside of this div is where we're going to have our img tag for our photo. Now here's what I mean. If we go back to our application, this is the hosted app, the complete app. And by the way, you can access this application by navigating to my-insta-photo.netlify.app. So my-insta-photo.netlify.app, and you're going to see the Instagram application right there. It's not responsive though, and I'm going to leave responsiveness to you. You're going to have to work on making it responsive for mobile when you're done building the application. Now, if we come over to our Instagram app and we hover on this image, for example, see this title right here that says click to edit photo that shows up. That's the title we are writing right here on line 4 with the title attribute. And we can click on our photo and change it to edit our profile image. So I can change this profile image right now, and I have a new profile image right there for me. So I'm giving this div a roller button, and instead of this div is where we have our img tag. And inside src right here again, we need another image for our default profile photo. We need the default profile image. And if we come over to our completed application, and what I want to do is go over to the applications part of dev tool, and this is the IndexedDB database. Let's delete this database so that we have our application without all the images. We reload this, and look at what we have right now in our Instagram app. We have just this bare application with the default image for our profile photo. Now back to our code base, we need a profile icon inside of the assets folder. And once again, I'm going to be pasting this profile icon, and we will also provide the link in the description of this video. So this is going to be profile icon.svg file right here. This is my profile icon, and we can now use this profile icon inside of the bio component. So the links in the description, you get all the assets which you're going to be using to build this application. Now let's create a new line 1, and we're going to import our profile icon. So this is profile icon from, let's navigate to that directory. This should be assets/profile icon .svg. So profile icon.svg, and we have a profile icon. Now we can use it instead of the src attribute. So this is src, and we have a curly brace, and then we have profile icon. Now what's going to be the alternate name for our image? Let's say profile. So profile as alt. Next, we're going to create a new div named profile info. So this is div.profile info. This is for everything inside of all the text inside of our bio. And div.profile info, this is going to be the div where we have buildingithere.io, learn to code and connect with the best minds, and we have the name Ebenezer done. So let's create this div, and inside of this we're going to start with a p tag with class name as name, and I have Ebenezer done as the default name. Remember that we're going to be able to change, modify this bio. We're going to be able to change the name and change the description for that particular person, for the particular user. So we have another p tag with class name of about, and I'm going to have building new dev.io. New dev.io is my learning platform, which is currently work in progress at the time of recording this video. But you should check it out, and you should join the new dev community right now. If you go over to newdev.io/community, you can join my dev community, interact with other developers, ask questions, get answers, build projects together. So learn to code and connect with the best minds. And this is going to be the default text, the default name, and the default value for my Instagram application. Next, we're going to need the edit form. So if we go back to our complete app, this is the complete app. We have this edit button, and when we click on this edit button, we have a form that shows up where we can edit our name, and we can edit the description, which is the about text. We click cancel, and that closes a form. So let's create a button first of all named edit. So this is going to be button, and we have the text edit for a button. And next we need our edit form. So we can just go ahead and create our edit form with the form tag, but I want to also show you how to put JSX inside of normal JavaScript variables. So we can decide to create a new variable named edit form. And remember, React is all about breaking down our huge application into reusable bits of code. So we can also go ahead and break down our bio. We have our edit form separately, and this is us putting JSX as a value of a JavaScript variable edit form. We wrap it in the parentheses, and then we just write a JSX code. This is form right here, and we have a JSX code for form. And the next thing we want to do is we can go ahead and use form just the same way we use JavaScript variables in JSX. So we have the curly brace on line 19, and we have edit form right here, which we created on line 4. Now let's put something in a form. First of all, we want to give a form a class name of edit bio form. And next we want inputs fields. We want to input fields. Let's have input fields, and type is text. We'll give our input field an ID. We are going to use this later when we want to get the value from this input field and edit the form. So we have placeholder right now as your name, and we also want another input field, and we have placeholder as about you. Now let's see what we have so far. This is the hosted app, so let's go over to our local application, and if we reload, we're not going to see our bio here. What we need to do first of all is bring our bio inside of the app.js file, just the same way we brought nav into the app.js file. So we have nav, and the next thing we have is a bio component. And since I'm using VS Code, I have this automatically imported for me once I click on that, and I have my bio right here. Now this is what we have. We have import nav on line 1. On line 2 we have import./app.css file. On line 3 we are also importing bio from component/bio. Now with JavaScript and modules, we can also decide to come over to this components directory and create an index.js file right here, and then export our different components. This is what you're going to learn when working with JavaScript, just JavaScript, not React. So this is not specific to React. We can come over to our index.js file in the components directory, and then export our different components. So we can export the nav component. Let's export default as nav from ./nav, and we also want to export bio. So default as bio from bio. So this is from the bio component. And let's just duplicate this and export default as gallery. Remember, this is in capital letter, so as gallery from ./gallery. right now line 3 gives us an error because we've not put anything inside of the gallery component yet. So let's just comment this out. And with this done, we can come over to the app.js file, and instead of importing nav separately and bio separately, we can do this on one line. So we have import nav and then comma, then we have also import bio, and we can do this from just /components. Let's remove line 3. So this is what we have. We have import nav, we have import bio from components. So import right here, you have the curly brace, and then you have nav, you have bio, and this is possible because we've exported that from an index.js file inside the components directory. Now we can just use nav on line 7 and bio on line 8. Back to our browser, this is what we have currently. So we have the profile image, we have name as Ebenezer Done, about text as building new dev.io, learn the code and connect with the best mind. We have our form, we have the edit button, and later on we're going to see how to be able to open this form and close this form based on clicking on the clicking the edit button. So if we click this edit button right now, the form opens. We click the cancel button, the form closes. Currently, you can see that this hosted application looks different from our local application. To fix that, we'll come over to the app.js file, and instead of wrapping our components in div with class of app, let's do this with class of container. This is created in our app.css file. And back to our application, look at that. We have localhost, Ebenezer Done, building.io, learn the code and connect with the best minds. Let's create a line break on line 8, and this is using the BR tag. And next one we want is the cancel button. We also want the save button. So let's have a button tag right here, and the text is going to be cancel. Let's give a button type of button. This is important when creating buttons. You have to specify the type, and type of button, class name as cancel dash button. And we have the cancel button. We also need the save button. So button right here, and text is going to be saved. Let's give it type as button also. Now back to our application, we have our form, and then we have the cancel button, we have the save button also. Another thing, when we zoom into 100%, you can see that our nav is not styled properly, and that's because back to our app.js file, we don't want to wrap our nav component inside of container along with a bio and gallery components. We want to put a nav components outside of the container. So we have nav, and then we have the container div, which contains a bio and gallery components. But we have this weird squiggly lines which says JSX expressions must have one parent element. So we can either fix this by creating a new div and putting everything inside of it, or if we want to avoid creating extra divs, extra unnecessary divs, we can just use an empty tag right here. So we have this empty tag, and this represents a React fragment. In the past, to create something like this, we have to call react.fragment, but we don't need that right here. We can just use this empty tag, and that's going to be a React fragment. We don't need an unnecessary div. We just wrap this in the parent element, which is this empty div we have on line 6 and line 11. Now we have the nav component, and we have the container, which is going to contain the bio component and the gallery component. On line 2, we removed the app.css file instead of the React import. So let's fix that. Now we can save this, and back to our app component. This is what we have. We have a navbar which is placed on top, and then we have bio right here, Ebenezer Done, building new dev.io. We have the edit button, and when we click on this edit button later on, that's going to open up our form, our edit form, and when we click on the cancel button, that's going to close our edit form. Next thing we're going to do is create a gallery component. So instead of the gallery.jsx file, we're going to start by creating a new function named gallery, and this is going to return our JSX code, just like we've done for the nav component and the bio component. Now let's return, and in parentheses, we're going to start with an input tag, and this is going to be the file input for adding new photos. We have input type, and instead of text this time around is input type as file, and we have name right here as photo, and we have ID as add photo input. So we're going to use this to get the value of whatever image, whatever input we pick from a file picker, this input tag right here. Now these are input tag, and if we come back to the main application, the hosted application, this is what I'm referring to. This input tag right here, when we click on it, we have a file picker where we can select whichever image we want to add to our application. Right now, instead of a regular input tag, we have this icon which is going to show up in place of the input tag. So to achieve that, we've already hidden the input tag with CSS. Next thing we want to do is create a label for our input tag. So this is going to be with the label tag, and right here is where we want to put our icon. So HTML4, this add input tag right here. So we're just going to copy and paste that, and inside of our label tag we have our font awesome icon, which we're using the I tag for. So this is I, and then we have class name as add photo button, and for our font awesome icon we have FAS FA-plus-square, and this is going to give us that font awesome icon, the plus and square icon that we can click on and add new photos. Now we have that red squiggly line again. What we're going to do to fix that is wrap this in an empty tag right here. So we're just going to drag this and save. We have a gallery component right there. Let's also export, so we don't forget to export this. So export default gallery. Let's save this and go back to our component/index.js file, and let's uncomment this gallery export. We can now go over to our app.js file and import gallery. So we just have command line 1 and we have a gallery import. We can then use it on line 9. So we have gallery and call that like a regular HTML component. Back to a browser. Look at that, this is our local app, and we have this plus sign, and when we click on it we have the file picker for selecting whichever image we want for our Instagram application. Back to our gallery.jsx file, let's add default images so that our application starts looking good from the start. So I'm just going to add hard-coded images. Once again, I'm going to paste a set of images inside of the assets folder, and I also leave a link to that in the description of this video. And all these images are gotten from pexels, so I'm going to paste them, and I just have them labeled as pexel 1, pexel 2, pexel 3, and so on. And back to our gallery.jsx file, let's import our different images. So I'm going to start by importing pexels 1 from /assets/pexels1.jpg. So that's the name of the file, and I'll duplicate this for pexels 2, 3, 4, and 5. And what I want to do next is change this to 2 and change this to 2 right here. Let's also do the same thing for pexels 3, pexels 4, and pexels 5. We're going to repeat that step for the file names. We have pexel 3, pexels 4, and pexels 5 right there. Now we can use these different images inside of our JSX code. For our images, we'll create a new section with the HTML section tag, and let's give it class name of gallery. Remember, you have to use the exact class names because these are what I've already styled in the app.css file. Or you can decide to create your own class names and use your own styling. You can decide to create your own app.css file, use your own styling, and give them whatever classes you want. On line 16, let's create our first gallery image, and we have div.item right here. So for each image item, we have our img tag, and src is going to be pexels 1. So we have pexels 1, and we have class name as item image. So this is class name equal to item-image. We also need a button. So if we come over to the complete application right here, my instaphoto.netlify.app, and you hover on an image, you see that we have a delete button, and when you click on that delete button, the image is gone. So we need a button for each of the image we're going to create. So we have this img tag. Next we have the button tag, and text is going to be delete. Now let's give a button tag class name for styling, and this is delete-button. Next thing we want to do is duplicate this item div for 2, 3, 4, and 5, and we're just going to do the same thing. Rename pexels 1 to pexels 2, and do the same thing for 3, do the same thing for 4, and do the same thing for 5. Now let's save this, go back to a browser, and see what we have. So back to our browser, look at that. We have our images. We have 5 images, and right here when we hover on them, we have the delete button, and this was styled using CSS. So you can go over to the app.css file and explore it to see how this styling works. But I already expect that you're good with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript before jumping on this crash course. Now that we've successfully created a nav, bio, and gallery components, we've been able to successfully use it inside of the app.js file. Also, let's see how to make our React application dynamic so that we'll be able to add our images of choice instead of the current static data we have. And we also see how to make this edit button in our bio component work so that the form will only be visible when we click on it, and then when we click on the cancel button, the form will stop being visible. We'll do this by learning how to work with state in our React app. Alright, let's talk about state in React. State is like your normal JavaScript variables. So let's say we want a variable named value of button, and then this is equal to click me. and we want to use value of button instead of the current edit text we have for the edit form button. So remember, for variables for JavaScript inside of your JSX, you have to wrap it in curly brace, and then we have value of button right here. So if we go back to our application, look at the value of our button, click me. Now the difference with normal variables in JavaScript and state with React is that our React component is going to watch for changes in our state, so that if the value of our state changes, our component is also going to update to reflect the new value. Now look at this. If we decide to add an on-click event listener to this button, and this is a function that let's say this function modifies our value of button. So value of button should now be equal to you clicked me. Now if we go back to application, what we want is that when we click on this button which says click me, the value is going to change to you clicked me. But if we try that using our normal JavaScript variable, you see that nothing happens. And that's why the React framework is called React, because it's reactive. Our components react to changes in our application. So if instead of creating a variable on line 4, we created the React state to house the value click me, whenever we update it, the value of this button is also going to change to whatever we update it to. Now to create a state in React, React has a hook named useState, and we have to import it from React. So on line 1, let's import useState from React, and then instead of having a let's value of button equal to click me, let's use const, and then what we want right here is useState, and this is going to be the value of the button click me. This useState function, when called, returns an array as its value. Now the first value of this array is going to be the actual value of our button, which is click me. So if we decide to log this to the console and want to log value of button and 0 right here, we expect to get click me as its value. So if we go back to a browser and inspect and over to the console, look at that, we have click me as its value. And the second element in our array is going to be a function which we use to update our array. So look at this, it's a function. Now we can destructure it directly, and this is how you see states with React when using the useState hook. So we're just going to destructure directly. We'll get the first element as value of button, and the second element as a function which we're going to use to update our state. So this function is set value of button. Now we have two different variables. We have the value of button variable, which is the actual value of a button, and then the second element in the array is the function which we're going to use to update our state. So if we come back to our edit button, and let's just remove the value of button event listener for now, so that we have only value of button, and we go back to a browser, look at this, we have click me because the value of button contains this string which we passed to the useState hook when it was called. In React, hooks are like your normal JavaScript functions. You can call them like your functions, but they are called hooks because they were built as a functionality extension to the initial React. Remember, like I mentioned before, if you go to an old React code base, you'll see class-based components mostly instead of functional components. But with React hooks, we're now able to get all the functionalities we would have gotten using class-based components. And that's why I would advise anyone who's learning React today to just go straight to learning how to work with functions, because they're simpler and more straight to the point. So we have value of button right here, and we have set value of button. Another thing you need to know about hooks is that they can only be called inside of a React component. So this is the bio component right now. We can't call hooks outside of the bio component. Look at that, we have an error right here. React hook useState cannot be called at the top level, so they have to be called inside of a component, and that's the difference between hooks and your regular function. Now we have value of button, and we have the set value of button method, which we're going to use to update our value of button state. Now we're going to add that on-click event listener again on line 27, and this on-click event listener is going to return this set value of button method, and inside of this set value of button method is where we'll put the new value of our button. So let's say the new value of our button is equal to you clicked me. Now let's go try it again. What we expect is that when we click on this button, the value is going to change to you clicked me. Now look at this, look at that, you clicked me right there in a browser. with state, we're able to update our React component dynamically without even reloading our page. That means that when we come over to our edit form and our user bio, we want to use state for this name Ebenezer done, and we also want to use state for this bio, building new dev.io, learn to code and connect with the best minds, so that if we update our state right here, I type in the new name and I say John Doe, and about you, hey, it's me right here, and I click the save button, it's just going to update this state, and our component is also going to update to reflect the new changes without the need to reload our page. Back to our code base, let's see how we can use the useState hook to create states for the name and about user text. What we're going to do on line 5, we won't be using value of button anymore, so let's change this to user details, and we also want to name the function for updating our state set user details. This is what you're going to see in most React code base, the name user details and then the function for updating. This can be named anything, but to keep it consistent, you use sets and then the name user details. So set user details, you know that this function is going to update the user details state, and then use state right here. We want to use an object for our state instead of a string. So for the state right here, we have name as Ebenezer done, and then we have the about text right here. So I'm just going to copy what we have here already, and then let's paste it on line 7. So we have building new dev.io, learn to code and connect with the best minds. And right here we have an error currently for the set value of button method because it doesn't exist anymore. And we're also going to remove value of button, and this used to be edit, so let's change it back to edit. And right here we have our user details and we have the set user details method. Now what we're going to do on line 28 and 29 is we're going to use the state instead of our hard-coded string. So this is going to be user details dot, what's the value, dot name. So right here we have user details dot name, and I have an error right here because this is supposed to be small case and D is supposed to be with capital letter. So we have user details dot name, and we also need to wrap this in curly braces. Now for the about text, we have user details dot about. So this is going to be user details dot about. Now let's go back to the browser and look at that. We have Ebenezer done and then the user detail building new dev.io. The next thing we want to do with our edit form is make it work, so that when I type name right here as John and a new about text and hit the save button, we're going to update our state using the set user details state. For that, I'm going to create a new function, and that's going to be a function named update user details, and I'll call this function whenever we click on the save button. First of all, let our function take in the event parameters so that on line 11 we're going to prevent the default reload behavior. Next, we'll call our set user details method, and let's pass in a new value for our state. For our name property, we want the value from this input text on line 19, and let's give it a name attribute so that we can use that to get our name property, and name attribute is going to be name of user. Now if we come over to line 13, we can just directly do event.target.name of user, which is the name attribute we gave it on line 19, and dot value. So that's us getting the value. The next thing we want to update is the about property, and for about we'll do the same thing. So let's give the input tag on line 21 a name attribute also, and this is going to be about user. We can also use the ID attribute for this, and if we use the ID attribute, we'll have to call document.query selector or document.get element by ID and then get the value. So for about on line 14, we have events.target.about user.value. Let's take our update user details function, and we want to add an on submit event listener to the form tag on line 19, and this is going to be on submit. I want to return a function, and this is e for events, and we'll call our update user details function right here. So this is update user details. We're also going to pass the event as its argument. We'll also come over to line 26, and for the button type we have submit instead of button, so that our event.target object is going to reference the right element for name of user and about user. Now let's go back to our browser, and for name we have Jane Bottas, and about you is going to be hello, I'm Jane, and let's hit the save button. And look at that, Jane Bottas, hello, I'm Jane. The state has been updated, and our component is also updated to reflect the new value. What we're going to do next is only show this edit modal when we click the edit button, and when we click the cancel button, our edit modal will go back to not being visible. When we also click the save button, and after our bio has been updated, our edit button should also go back to not being visible. And for that, we're going to use state again. So let's come over to line 8, and we'll create a new line, and we're creating a state on line 9 named edit form is open, and for the update method we have set edit form is open, and this is equal to use state, and by default we don't want it to be open, so let's give it the value of false. Now, can you guess how we're going to use this state to conditionally open or close our edit form? I want you to pause this video and give that a shot. We'll go over to line 24 where we have our edit button, and what we want to do here is say on click, whenever we click on the edit button, we want to set edit form is open to true. So this is going to be set edit form is open as true. And the next thing we want to do on line 40 is only show our edit form when edit form is open is equal to true. And for that, we're going to use a condition on line 40, and since this is already wrapped in a curly brace, we have edit form is open, then show the edit form. Instead, show nothing. Back to our browser, see that the edit form does not show anymore, and if we click the edit button, we have the edit form. We also want to not show the edit button whenever the edit form is open, and for that, instead of showing nothing on line 40, we can just take line 39 with the edit button and we'll paste that right here on line 40. And if we go back to our browser, see that when the edit form is open, the edit button does not show anymore. And if we reload that page, see that we now have the edit button. We click the edit button and the edit form shows why the edit button is gone. One thing we can also do for the edit button is we can decide to make our code neater by declaring a new variable for edit button, and this is going to be edit button right here equal to our button tag. We can then take the edit button on line 31 and add it to line 42. So we have edit form is open, show the edit form, else show the edit button. The next thing we want to do is close the edit form whenever we click the cancel button. Now I want you to pause this video and give that a shot. You're going to be able to do it. On line 24, we have on click right here, and this returns a function, and what we want to do is set edit form is open as false. Back to our browser, let's hit the cancel button, and look at that, the form is closed. We hit the edit button and the form is open. Back to our code base, we also want to close the edit form when we successfully update the user details, so we also have set edit form is open as false. Now if we go back to our browser, and currently it's on Ebenezer Donald, let's change this to John Doe, and hey, I'm John, and hit the save button. Look at that, John Doe, hey, I'm John, and the edit form is closed. So that's how state works in React. That's how we can make our app reactive using the useState hook. Whenever we make a change to our state, our component updates to reflect that change. The next thing we're going to do is see how to work with dynamic images in our React app. We want to be able to click this profile image icon and then select a new image, and that should also update our application with the new image we've selected. Alright, for our profile image, let's go over to the bio section, and on line 35 we'll create a new line, and we want to create an impute tag with type as file, and this is going to be for selecting a new image, and this should accept only images, and let's use images of all kinds. So name, also for name we want photo, and we want to give it an ID of profile photo. So this is an ID, and we have profile photo and inputs. Next, we're going to wrap this div which contains our current profile icon in a label tag, and let's create a label for that. And this is HTML for this input tag right here, profile photo input. And then we're just going to drag this div inside of our label. In our CSS, we're hiding this input tag with ID of profile photo input, but this label is going to stand in its place, so that we're going to see this label instead of the input tag. Now if we come back to our browser and we click this profile icon, you see that we have the file picker. The next thing we want to do is add an on-click event listener to the profile icon, so that once we click on it and we choose any picture, that's going to update to our profile image. Back to our code base, we're going to create a new function for updating our profile image, and this is going to be named update profile photo, and this is our arrow function right here. And what we want to do is we'll get the selected photo, whatever photo that the user selects, and then we want to use state to store our photo, so we're going to update state here on line 36. Before we see how we can get the selected photo, let's come back to line 34 where we have src as profile icon, and instead of using this default profile image directly, we're going to create a state named profile photo, and we have the function for updating our state as set profile photo, and this is equal to use state, and the default value is now going to be profile icon. So we have profile icon as the default value. Now we can come back to line 45 where we have the image with src attributes, and instead of profile icon we have our states called profile photo right here. So this is a state profile photo. What we want to do in our update profile photo method is update this profile photo state right here. So selected photo here as its value. Now how can we get the selected photo? To get our selected photo, we need the JavaScript file reader class, which is going to let us read the contents of our selected files. To simplify the process, I created a package named getPhotoURL, and we can just install it using npm install getPhotoURL. And this package is going to help us get the photo URL directly. So we just call the getPhotoURL method and pass in the ID of our file picker, this input tag right here on line 42. And that should just get us the photo URL of whatever selected file we've chosen. With that installed, let's come over to line 1 and create a new line. And we have imports get photo URL from this our package get photo URL. Now, if you come to the package.json file, you see that our new package which we just installed has been added for us. And that's it right here under dependencies. So we have this get photo URL package. And from line 6 to 8, we have this testing library dependencies, which we don't really need as we deleted the test files. So let's also remove that and run npm install again to get a fresh install. Back to our bio component, let's take this update profile photo method up right here just before the edit from GSX, so that our function for updating profile is close to our function for updating user details. Now we have our update profile photo function, and we want to make this asynchronous. So we have async right here. And on line 23, let's create a new variable named new profile photo, and this is going to be equal to our get photo URL method which we've imported on line 2, and then we're just going to pass in the ID of our photo input, and the ID right here is profile photo input. Now this is the selector right here. We have hash, and then we have profile photo input. You can also open up this get photo URL method to see what's going on under the hood. So if you're using VS Code, for example, you hit the command or control button and click on it, and that should open up this get photo URL function, and you see what's going on under the hood. So this is the selector parameter we're passing to it, and then we get the HTML element, and we have the file reader class which we are using to read the content of our selected photo, and we are also returning the photo URL right here, so that we can just use the photo URL directly as our image src attribute. Back to line 24 where we have the set profile photo function. We're just going to set profile photo as new profile photo, and we hit the save button. Now we'll go back to line 44 and let's add an on-click event listener to label, and this is on click right here, and we want to update profile photo whenever we select any image. Notice that our on-click event listener expects a function and not a function call, so you're not expected to do this update profile photo. This is going to throw an error. If you want to call the function maybe with an extra argument, you'll have to make the value of our on-click event listener a function on its own. So you have to do this. But since we're not calling the update profile photo method with any argument, we can just pass it as a function, and that should be the value of our on-click event listener. Back to our browser, let's click on this profile photo image icon, and let's select a photo and hit the open button. And look at that, see that this changes. So whenever we select a photo, we're getting that photo URL using the get photo URL package which we imported on line 2, and we've passed in the ID of our profile photo input. Next, we're going to set our new profile photo URL as the value of our profile photo state, which we created on line 11 and which we are using on line 46 as the image src attribute. Next, let's see how we can also update our gallery dynamically, so that when we click this button for adding images and we click an image, we'll also use the get photo URL method to get that image URL, and then we'll add it to our gallery. All right, let's come over to our gallery.jsx file inside the components directory, and for our gallery section, instead of all the static images, we want to add our own images dynamically. And for that, we're also going to use state. On line 7, let's create a new line, and we're going to create a state named all photos, and this is going to be our all photos state. And the function for updating our photos is going to be named set all photos, and this is equal to use state, and our use state method is going to take in an array as its value. For each photo, we're going to have an object, and we'll have ID. This is going to be the ID of the photo. Then we'll also have the URL of the image. So we are going to use the get photo URL method again to get the URL of whatever image you select, and this is going to be URL of photo, ID of photo, and we can have as many photos as we want. So we can have comma after each photo object, and we have the same thing. We have ID and we have URL. So that's what we're going to do in our array. And the reason we are adding ID to our photos is so that we'll be able to delete specific photos. So if what we only want is to add photos, we can just use array of strings instead of array of objects, and our array of string is just going to contain the photo URL here, and then we have photo URL as a next string. But we want to be able to delete photos, so let's give each photo an ID. Inside of the gallery section, let's remove line 23 to line 38, and then we'll use the div on line 19 as a template for each of the photos inside of the all photos state. In React, to loop through data to loop through an array, it's the same thing you do in your regular JavaScript. So this is all photos right here, and dot map, and then for each element inside of the all photos array, we have this value photo, and this returns our JSX code. We want to return this div with class name item right here. Now this is what we're doing. We're mapping through this all photos array, and then for each element inside of our all photos array, we are getting photo. So this is this photo right here. This photo right here in parentheses represents each element in our all photos array. So on line 21, I want you to pause this video and change this src attribute to what we're going to expect from photo. Now line 21, instead of pexels1, we have photo.url. Remember, I said that each photo has the ID property and the URL property. When mapping through items in React, we also need to give each element a key attribute, and this key attribute should be unique. In this case, we're going to use photo.id since our photo ID is expected to be unique. Now we can remove all the image imports which we have from line 2 to line 6. We also have a mistake on line 1. This is supposed to be import use state from React instead of CJS/React. I guess that was a problem with the auto import. So we can hit save now and go back to a browser, see that our gallery is now empty. What we want is when we click on this button for adding new photos and we click a new photo and click the open button, we'll create an add photo function that gets that photo URL and then add it to our all photo state, which we have on line 4. Now let's create that function. On line 6, we have an add photo function, and this should also be an asynchronous function. And then we'll create a new object variable right here, and that's going to be named new photo, and ID is going to be date.now. Remember, we want ID to be unique, so we just have we're just going to call the date.now method, and as this URL, we'll call our get photo URL function, and then passing the ID of our photo input. Now on line 16, you can see that our photo input has an ID named add photo input. We have the pound symbol, that's hash, and then we have add photo input right here. So we have a new photo, and the next thing we want to do is call our set all photos method. Remember, our all photo states is an array, and then we have a new photo. We want to add this to whatever existing data there is inside of this all photo state. So we're also going to use the spread operator to get all the other data inside of our all photo states. Now this is JavaScript. Spreading is JavaScript, not React, so I expect you to know how this works. But basically what this does is it takes out each element inside of the all photos array and then add each of them to this new array which we are creating on line 32. So the value of set all photos is going to be a new photo, first of all, this new photo object, and then every other photo that's been created inside of this all photo state. Next thing we're going to do is add an on-click event listener to this label on line 19. The value of our on-click event listener is going to be the add photo function. Now let's save this and back to browser. Let's try adding a new photo. So we hit the plus symbol and let's choose this photo right here. hit open, and look at that, we have our image added to our state. So if we add a new image, that new image is going to be appended to the already existing images that we have in our state. So look at that, we have all of these images, and we can add as many images as we want to our state, and application automatically updates. So that's it for working with images, external libraries, and working with photos in React, being able to use the file picker to add a new image to our React application. Now we have a problem, and that's that since we want to use this web app to store images, we expect these images to always be there whenever we come back to our web application. But currently, if we reload our page, you see that everything is gone, even the updates we might make to bio. Let's say I'm actually not Ebenezer Don, I'm Jane Butters right here, and hello, I'm Jane right here, and I hit the save button and I add as many images as I want. I'm like, this is a really beautiful image gallery that I have for myself. But the problem is, once I close my browser and come back to it, or I even close this tab, or I shut down my laptop, all my images, all my data is gone, and I'm back to the original empty gallery and hard-coded Ebenezer Don string with bio as built-in new dev.io. So bio as built-in new dev.io. So what we want to see next is how we can store our data in the browser storage, so that when we update our profile image, that gets stored to IndexedDb. We update a bio, that also gets saved in the browser storage. We add new images, and all our images get saved in the browser storage, so that when we close our browser tab and open it again, we refresh our page, we shut down our laptop and come back to this application, our data is always going to be there. So let's see how to do that using DexieJS and IndexedDb. Alright, IndexedDB is a database in the browser, and if you come over to the complete application, this hosted app right here, my instaphoto.netlify.app, you can see what I'm saying right now. You inspect, and what we want to do is go over to the application section of our dev tool and say that we have local storage, which you might have heard before while you were learning JavaScript. We have session storage, and we have IndexedDB right here, which we are currently using to store these images inside of the complete app. So you notice that if you reload this complete app as many times as you want, the images are always going to be there waiting for you. The name, the bio which you updated is always going to be there waiting for you, and that's because this data is stored in IndexedDB. So this is our IndexedDB database right here. We open it up and look at the name of our database is my Insta. And we have a bio right here, which currently contains the profile photo. And if we decide to update this name to Jane Butters and bio as hello, I'm Jane, and hit the save button, we should also have the name of our user and the bio of our user. So look at that, our bio right here with info. Remember, our user details is an object with name as Jane Butters and about text as hello, I'm Jane. We also have the profile photo image URL. And for images, notice that we also have gallery, and look at all our different images. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 images currently, and these are all the different URL and IDs of our images. So for the first image, we have ID of 1 and the URL of that particular image. Let's break down our IndexedDB database. First of all, if you come over to DevTools, we have this IndexedDB section, and then the name of our database is my Insta. So when creating a new database, we are going to give it a name, and you can name it anything you want. I decided to name this one my Insta, and inside of this my Insta database, notice that we have 2 buttons right here. We have one for bio and we have another one for gallery. Each of them is called an object store. So this is the bio object store, which is going to contain details about the user bio, and we have the gallery object store, which is going to contain images. So you can have as many object stores as you want inside of your database. Object stores are a way to structure your database so that you're going to separate different information and data for ease of understanding and reference. Now, regular IndexedDB on its own is kind of complex, and I have a 3-hour course on IndexedDB on my YouTube channel, so you can check it out to learn everything you need to know about IndexedDB. We're going to cover how to work with IndexedDB from scratch with pure JavaScript right in this course, so I'm also going to leave a link to that in the description of this video. But for our Instagram app, there's a library which I use instead of the core JavaScript API for IndexedDB, and that's named DexieJS. Dex is a minimalistic wrapper for IndexedDB. It makes working with IndexedDB much simpler, much easier than the core JavaScript API for IndexedDB. And working with IndexedDB in React using Dexie is also a smooth process. Now, to get started with Dexie, we'll come back to our code base, and we're going to open up a terminal, and let's clear what we currently have so that you can see it better. And we're going to run the command npm install Dexie. We'll also need another package named Dexie React Hooks, and Dexie React Hooks is going to help us watch for changes in our IndexedDB database, so that when we add or update data in it, it's going to also update our component with that new data. Now we can close the terminal, and we'll come over to our src directory and create a new file named DexieJS. This can be named anything. We can decide to name this data.js or store.js, but I want it to be easy for you to understand when you see it. So Dexie.js, this is where we want to create our IndexedDB database using Dexie. And to do that, we'll first of all import Dexie on line 1. We're importing Dexie from Dexie, and to create our database, we're going to create a variable named db, and we'll just call new Dexie, and the name of our database is going to be my insta. So let's name this my insta, just like we did in the already hosted application. And this is how simple it is to create a new database with Dexie. But if you're not using DexieJS, you're using the core JavaScript API for IndexedDB, it's going to be much less straightforward than this. And to create our object stores, remember we talked about object stores when I was showing you the IndexedDB database. We'll call db.version and then .stores right here, and the stores is going to take an object argument. And first of all, we have bio, and for the structure of our bio, we have name and about. We also have gallery, and for the structure of our gallery, we have ID and URL. Now on line 4, where we have db.version, this number we have in parentheses as the argument for the version function is the version number for our database. Now we need version numbers for our database, so that if we decide to update the structure of our database later on, and instead of having bio as name and about, I also want to have favorite, so the user's favorite things or favorite clothes and all that. We'll need to update the version of our db to 2 for that, or 3 or 4 or 5. So we can update the version of our database if we want to make changes to the structure of our database. So instead of just bio and gallery, if we decide to add something else later on, we'll have to update the version of our database so that our browser knows that this is a new database structure we want to use. So that's what the version number is for. And in updating version numbers, we can only go higher and not lower. So we can go from 1 to 0. We can only go from 1 to 2, and it has to be whole number. So we can go from 1 to 1.5. We can only go from 1 to 2, and 2 to 3, and 2 to 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. In a DexieJS object store, the first value is going to be is primary key. So for gallery right now, we want ID to be is primary key, and we're going to use that primary key whenever we want to update a particular object in our object store, a particular data, a particular image in our object store. We're going to use this primary key ID to get that image and either delete it from our database, which we're going to be doing later on, or we update its URL. For our primary key, we can have it automatically update whenever we add a new photo to our gallery object store. And to do that, we have the ++ symbol just before ID, and this is going to auto increment whenever we add a new photo to our gallery. So when adding photos to our gallery, we only need to provide the URL for that photo, and the ID is going to be auto provided, and it's going to auto increment with each photo we add to that gallery object store. Now for bio, currently we have name as the primary key, but that's not what we want. We want name and about to be part of the object. For our bio's primary key, we want to provide that ourselves when adding new data to our bio object store. And for that, we're just going to leave the first value as blank. So we have this comma, and first value is going to be blank, and then we have name and about. Now when adding new data to our bio object store, we're going to provide that primary key ourselves. And this is because we want two objects in the bio object store. One, the object for the name and about user details, and we also want an object for the photo URL. So we're going to create two objects. If you go back to our IndexedDB database in the complete app, you notice that bio has this info primary key, which contains an object that has about our name and about user details, and bio also has this profile photo key, which contains the profile image. So that's also what we want to achieve here. That's why we're leaving the primary key for bio as blank on line 5. Now with our IndexedDB database successfully created with Dexie, we can just export it on line 3 so that we can use it in our individual components. Back to our bio component, let's see how we can update a bio in our IndexedDB database whenever we hit the save button. And for that, we'll come over to this update user details function on line 13. And just after we update our state with the new user details, we also want to update our bio object store in our IndexedDB database here. The first thing we're going to do is import db from Dexie, and this is going to be import db on line 4 from Dexie. Now for line 20, inside of the update user details function, we'll have db.theBioObjectStore.put, and on line 20 we have db.bio.put. This put method is going to take as its first argument the object data, and as its second argument the primary key of the particular object we want to update, and we're going to name it info in our case. Now for this object we have the same thing which we have for the set user details method, and that's going to be name as event.target.name of user.value, and then we have about. Since both of them are exactly the same, we're going to create a new variable named object data, and this is going to be equal to an object containing the name and about details of our user. And for set user detail, right here we just have object data. I want to do the same thing for db.bio.put. We have object data and then info as its primary key. IndexedDb is asynchronous, so we need to use the await keyword for our db.bio.put method, and we also want to make our update user details function asynchronous using the async keyword. And with that, let's go back to our browser and over to localhost where we have our current application, and we'll come over to the IndexedDb section also. Now let's try to update a bio. Currently you see that in the IndexedDb database has not been created yet, and that's because we've not called db yet. We just created db inside of the dex.js file, but we've not called it yet. Now when we click on this save button, that's going to call db.bio.put, and when we call db, is also going to create a database, and then we expect it to update our bio object store with this new object data. Let's add a new name. A new name is going to be Jane Bottas, and about you is going to be hey, I'm Jane, and hit the save button. Now notice that our database has been created for us right here, named my Insta, and look at that, we have the bio object store and we have the gallery object store. Now for bio, notice that we have a bio key named info with name as Jane Bottas and about as hey, I'm Jane. Now when we reload the application, you're going to see that it goes back to the default name, which is Ebenezer Dawn, and bio as needed.io, but in our IndexedDb database we still have Jane Bottas and about as hey, I'm Jane. So what we want to do is we're going to come back to application, and inside of this default value for user details, instead of the current name as Ebenezer Dawn and about as buildingnewdev.io, we want to get the bio data from our IndexedDb bio object store, and that's going to be db.bio.get, and then this get method expects a key named info. Now remember that IndexedDb is asynchronous, and this has to be called using the await keyword, but we can't do that here since this is not inside of an asynchronous function, and we can't make a bio component an asynchronous function either. So a way to do asynchronous updates like this whenever we load our application is using the use effect hook from React. Now let's use Ctrl+Z to go back to how things were, and what we want to do instead is use a use effect hook right here, and this is going to be import use effect on line 1 from React, and our use effect hook can now contain a function that's going to be asynchronous right here. So we can create a new function named set data from db, and that's going to be equal to an asynchronous function that's going to do the update. Now this use effect hook is going to be the first function that runs when our component loads up. On line 16, let's first of all get the user details from our database. So let's create a variable named user details from db, and this is going to be await db.bio.get, just like we wanted to do before, and then the primary key, which is info, and that should give us the user details from db. And the next thing we're going to do is set user details. These are set user details state on line 7, and then we'll call the set user details update method, and that's going to be our user details from db. We only want to do this when the user details from db is available, so let's do this conditionally. We have user details from db and set user details from db right here. Next we're going to call set data from db, and that's how we call a synchronous function using the use effect hook in React. Let's go back to our browser and look at that. When we reload our page, we have Jane Bottas from our database, and if there's nothing in our database and we reload that page, we have the default value from state. So we are only doing these updates if user details from db is available. Next, let's do the same thing for the profile photo. So right here where we have the update profile photo function, after we successfully set profile photo as the new profile photo URL, let's also await db.bio.put, and then we have a new profile photo, and we also have the profile photo key right here. So this is going to be profile photo as its primary key. And back to our use effect hook, we're going to create a new variable named profile photo from db, and this is going to be await db.bio.get profile photo. Then if there's profile photo from db, set profile photo as profile photo from db. Now we can save this and go back to our browser to give it a shot. So let's update our profile photo right here, and we have my picture as profile photo, and then we reload that page. We have a problem. If we go back to our code base, let's see. Okay, on line 39 right here, we have profile photo instead of profile photo. So this is profile photo for profile photo. Now let's go back to our IndexedDB database, and let's see what was created for us. So look at this right here. We have bio and we have profile photo inside of a bio. And let's just clear this so that we give it another shot. Now let's try to update our profile photo, and look at this. We have a new profile photo. If we come back to our IndexedDB database, we should see our updated profile photo right here. So this is a profile photo and this is a photo URL. Now we can reload that page, and we always have our profile photo waiting for us. We can also update our bio so that instead of Ebenezer Don, we have Jane Bottas, and about hey, I'm Jane. And we can save this and look at that, hey, I'm Jane. For our bio edit button, we want default values for name and about. So let's go back to our code base, and inside of the edit form, we have default value right here for the first input, and that's going to be user details dot name. And we also want to do the same thing for the about input. So user details dot about, so that when we come back to a browser, hit the cancel button, reload that page, and we have Jane Bottas and hey, I'm Jane. We hit the edit button, we just have Jane Bottas and hey, I'm Jane that we can edit from. So if we want the name to remain the same and we want to add something extra to the about section and hit save, we have hey, I'm Jane right there for the about text. With this done, let's see how we can do the same for the gallery section. Now, before I get started with doing this for the gallery section, I want you to pause this video and give it a shot yourself. Try to update these images, add these images to the database yourself whenever you click on this add image button right here inside of our application. All right, now for the gallery section, we can decide to get all our images the same way we got items from our database inside of the use effects hook, where we have await db.bio.get info. But I want to show you how to use the useLiveQuery hook to watch for changes in the database, so that we can just add images directly to the database and get images from the database without needing a state like we did for the photo input and the about section. So notice that if we come back to the bio.jsx file, and whenever we update user details, we're also updating state first of all on line 31, so that our application also updates to reflect the new state, and then we are updating the bio. But for the gallery section, we don't want to have to update states every time we're updating or adding the new image to our gallery. We want to just add a new image to our gallery object store in the database, and that should automatically reflect in our application. And for that, we'll be using the useLiveQuery hook. So let's import useLiveQuery from Dexie React hook. So this is useLiveQuery from the Dexie React hooks package we installed earlier. And for all photos, instead of using our React use state hook, let's use the Dexie React hook. So this is const all photos, and that's going to be equal to useLiveQuery. And then this is specs and array access argument. I want to return db.galleries. Look, see that on line 4 db has been imported from Dexie. So db.gallery.toArray, and this is how we're going to get all photos as an array. The second argument right here inside of the useLiveQuery hook is called the dependency list, and we can leave it as empty or add other variables that we want our state updates to be dependent on. And that's also the same thing we can do for bio.jsx inside of the use effect hook. If we want this use effect hook to run again when something updates, we can add that here. So we can create a new state for user details, and then add user details as a dependency, so that whenever we update user details, whenever the value of user details changes, this use effect hook is going to run again. And if we want it to run only once, we leave this dependency array as empty on line 23. So if you want your use effect hooks to run as many times as you want, depending on the state change, you can add that state right here on line 23. Depending on a value change, you can add that value right here on line 23. So back to gallery.jsx, and we have all photos on line 7. Next, for our add photo function, all we need to do is call db.gallery dot add, and we just need to pass URL, and that should be await get photo URL, and we have our selector as add photo input. Now whenever we hit the add photo button, our add photo function is going to get that particular photo URL and add it to our gallery object store inside of our IndexedDB database. Since all photos on line 7 works like a state, when we update our database, you're also going to see that change reflect inside of our application without the need to reload. Let's remove line 3 as we don't need it anymore. And back to our browser, you see that our page is blank, and we can go to inspect. Whenever you see your page is blank in React, you can come over to the dev tools and the console to see what the error message is. And look at this, cannot read properties of undefined reading map. And that's because currently there's nothing in our database for photos. We've not added any photo in our database. Look at our gallery, is currently empty. So we have this error that we are trying to map through undefined, which is currently the value of our all photos variable. So let's loop through our all photos variable on line 27 conditionally. So what we're going to do here is add the optional chaining and say all photos, and if all photos is available, then you can map through. If all photos is not available, don't bother. We can now hit the save button, and back to application, you can see that our bio is loaded and our gallery is empty, and we don't have that error anymore. Now let's try adding a photo to our database. We hit the plus button, and we want to add this beautiful nature image, and look at that, this is added to our database, and our application is also automatically updated for us. So we come over to our database, you see this is already added, and we have the key that auto increments. We have one right here for us with this new value. We can decide to add more images, and see our database now says data may be stale. So we hit this refresh button. If you hit this button right here on the right, you're going to clear the database. To refresh the database instead with the new data, you hit refresh, and look at that, we have our new data right here in our database, and we have the key 1 and we have 2. Remember, like I said before, I want you to make this application responsive on your own. So you go over to the CSS code and make your application responsive, so that if we inspect, if you open it up in your mobile version, is also responsive. And when you're done, you send it over to me. Now, finally, what we want to do is see how we can make this delete functionality work. For the delete functionality, we'll come back to our application, and inside of the gallery component, let's create a new variable named remove photo. And this is going to be a function that expects an ID as its argument. So we have an ID parameter right there, and to remove a photo, to remove an item from our database, all we need to do is call that particular object. So we have db.gallery, or if we want to remove from the bio, we have db.bio. So in this case, we are doing db.gallery, and then we have the .delete method right here, and we have ID. So we want to delete any item with this particular ID, which is the key. So this is key. We can name this key instead if that's going to make it easier for you to understand. So this is key right here, or we use ID since we're expecting the ID. So this is how we delete from our object store using the delete method, and then the primary key of that particular object we want to delete. And to add, we have db.objectstore.add. To update, we have db.objectstore.put right here on line 32 inside of the bio.jsx file. Now to use our remove photo function, we'll come over to line 29 where we have the delete button, and let's add an on-click event listener that returns a function for removing our photo. So this is remove photo, and as its argument, we're going to pass photo.id. Now back to our browser, let's try to delete this image right here by clicking on the delete button, and you see that it's gone. And we can add as many images as we want to our Instagram application, and they're always going to be there whenever we open up our app. They're always going to be there waiting for us. And this is how we work with IndexedDB, DexieJS for offline data storage in React. This is how we work with React. We can also update our bio again, and instead of Jane Butters, I want to have Ebenezer Dawn right here, and as value I have hey, I'm Ebenezer, and save. And look at that, Ebenezer done. Hey, I'm Ebenezer. I can reload my page, and I'm always going to see my data waiting for me. With IndexedDB, we can store as many images as we want, and the size of our IndexedDB database depends on the disk size of our computer. So you can do the same thing we did right now. You can also store this data URL in local storage, but local storage has a 5 MB limit. So one image is right now, this image I'm guessing is going to be more than 5 MB already. We can have like an image of 6 MB right here, and if you want to use local storage for that, once the image exceeds 5 MB, you're not going to be able to store more images. But with IndexedDB, we can store as many images as we want. Now notice that when we reload the application, since these images are heavy, there's kind of a wait time before the images show up. So it's first blank and then the images show up. What we can do about that is we'll come over to this sections div, and then let's have a condition that says if there are no photos yet. So if it's still loading, if there are no photos yet, let's have a p tag that says loading. So initially, this is what's going to show. Initially, there's not going to be anything in photos, and then when we've successfully gotten all photos from our database, then the photos are going to show right here on line 27. So let's reload again and see what we have. So look at that. We have the loading text, and then we have all the images. And that's it for our React crash course. That's it for building our Instagram application. Let's wrap up, and I'll give you other tasks and assignments I want you to do before you submit your project to me. All right, for your homework, which is very important, don't complete this application without doing your homework. I want you to do your homework and submit it to me. This is so that you'll be able to learn better, you'll be able to understand what you're doing, so that at the end of the day, you wouldn't have just copied and pasted everything I did here on the video. You'd have been able to add your own functionality yourself. So it's very important that you do your homework. This is the GitHub repository for this project, and I'm going to leave a link to it in the description of this video. It's currently private, but by the time I publish this video, it would have been made public. To see your task, come over to this project section of the GitHub repository and the projects classic section. So projects right here, and we have homework, and look at it. We have 4 tasks right here that I need you to do. First of all, you have to make the app responsive on mobile. So do them one at a time. So you do the first one before the second one, and then the third one, and then the fourth one. So the first thing I want you to do is make the app responsive on mobile, so that you'll be able to open it up in your mobile phone and have a good experience. Right now, the application is the same thing on both mobile and desktop. So what I want you to do is make the app responsive on mobile. This is also going to help you dive into the CSS code and understand whatever is going on there, and understand how the different classes are working currently. Next, I want you to show a loading animation when images are being fetched from the database. Right now, if we reload our page, and while the images are being fetched, we have this loading text. Let's see a loading animation instead of an ordinary text when the image is being fetched. Next, I want you to use the useLiveQuery hook for the bio details instead of the current React useState hook. So right now, if we come over to the bio.jsx file, you see that for bio details, we have the React useState hook. And then whenever we're updating our user details, first of all, we're going to update our React state and then update data in the database. But just like we did for the gallery.jsx file, where we're directly using useLiveQuery, I want you to do the same for bio.jsx file. Lastly, I want you to add a button and functionality for clearing all images in the gallery at once. Right now, we have 6 images in the gallery, and what if I want to clear everything at once? I don't want to do it one by one. I want to hit delete on just one button, and it should clear the gallery object in the database at once, instead of deleting one at a time, one at a time, and one at a time. So this is also going to help you dive deeper into the DexieJS library. You have to come to the DexieJS documentation and see how that should work. See how you can clear all items in an object store at once. And that's it for your homework. I need you to do this, and I need you to submit it to me. You have to send me your finished app in the comment section of this video, and I'll check it out. And that's it for our Build an Instagram App React crash course. This is the code base of our application, but I don't want you to open this code until you work on this yourself. And this is the link to the live app, which I'm also going to leave in the description of this video, so you check it out and see how these things work. Also, hit the subscribe button on my channel and the notification bell so that you'll be the first to know when I upload new React content. We've been able to successfully learn how React works, how to set up a new React application from scratch, how to create components in React, what components are. We've learned about states in React. We've learned about the different hooks, the use effects hook. We've learned about how to use external packages, external libraries in the React app. We saw package.json. We saw how to use the Dexie package, the Dexie React hooks package, the get photo URL package, which I created to ease the process of getting photo URLs in your web app. We've also seen how props work in components, and basically everything you need to get started with your React journey. So this has been fun, and I enjoyed it. I hope you also enjoyed it as much as I did. I mean, you have to have enjoyed it as much as I did, but this was a lot of work for me, so I really need you to hit that subscribe button and find a way to support my channel. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye.